Welcome to the NBA slate breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Brent Hyden, taking a look at tonight's 9-game slate for FanDuel and DraftKings. Pretty good slate tonight, usual 9 games. And overall, it's kind of a bunch of defensive teams. For most part, I think we're over 50% of these kind of teams that are just they've been pretty good defensively. I don't know how much I want to attack them tonight.
Yeah, there's a few games where it's really tough to kind of decipher where you want to attack because, we do have some decent defenses on the slate, but a few high-scoring games that are really, really interesting. And then we have, of course, a rematch of the Rockets and Sixers. So definitely going to be an interesting night of basketball, that's for sure.
Yeah, let's dive in here. Spurs and Celtics, one of the lower totals on the night, 193. Both implied totals under 100. You and I don't have a ton of interest in this game. I know LaMarcus Aldridge was obviously one of the guys that we can kind of continue to look at. He's interesting because, he's kind of around a lot of other names. Porzingis, Simmons, Blake Griffin, Anthony Davis. And I kind of tend to see him going probably a little bit overlooked on this slate.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of interest in him in GPPs just because of his price. It's going to be tough for him to really pay that off. But if you're looking at a guy that's going to get you, a solid 40 to 45 fantasy points for cash games, I think he's definitely a decent option. And it's probably going to go overlooked just because, again, you mentioned guys in his price range, but also because it looks like Boston has been okay against power forwards this season, but there have been a few that have kind of torched him. Kelly Olynyk comes to mind. Had a decent game against them last time out, but Aldridge just a really high usage guy. The Spurs are just calling so many plays to get him open shots, and I think this is a spot where he can actually have a decent game.
It's hard to really go to anyone else on the Spurs right now. I know Pau Gasol obviously coming off a pretty big game. We were kind of looking at him a little bit before the show, and I guess I don't mind him in GPPs. At his price, he's pretty cheap, right around a 20% usage rate. It's once again, it all kind of depends on if those blocks and steals can come into play because he's kind of hovering right around 13-6, 13-7 a game. So I guess I don't mind him the more I look at it. Boston obviously has been better defensively, a little bit better on the glass this year, but Pau Gasol I think is a little bit unmatched.
Yeah, with Aaron Baines in there at center, I think Boston is a little bit better defensively. But if you look at Powell coming in at a price tag of like 5,200 on DraftKings, and he's still fairly cheap on FanDuel as well at 5,400, you could definitely go there. The minutes have been fairly safe with him, especially with Joffrey Laverne being out. I believe he is already ruled out for this game. Yes, he is out for this game as well. So it is a back-to-back, which is a little concerning because we know how Pop likes to handle those situations at times. So we do want to keep an eye on that news. But with the rest of the Spurs news already coming out, I would have expected to hear that Pau Gasol or any of these guys were resting with the second half of a back-to-back. But yeah, I don't mind him at all.
As far as other guys, Kyle Anderson, Rudy Gay, DeJounte Murray. I don't have a ton of interest in these guys tonight. Those are probably the spots that Boston's been the best against this year. They're just, Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart have actually, really solidified their defensive role. So I'm kind of off those guys.
Yeah, same here. Neither of those guys, like Rudy Gay, can't hit a shot to save his life right now. He's like 4 for 14 over his last 2 games. Manu not looking that great. Not really on Danny Green or any of these other guys from the Spurs.
As far as Boston goes, I don't mind Irving in GPPs just because of the lower ownership and taking a look. His usage rate obviously leads the team right around 29%. And you and I were looking, he's shooting a ton right now. It's going to kind of continue to be that way. His price tag, obviously up a little bit more, but I think when you kind of compare him to guys like Curry and Lillard and that kind of range, I don't mind him on this slate.
Yeah, I don't mind him in GPPs. Obviously, the Spurs are excellent on defense so far this season. They're one of the best defensive teams. I think they're 6th in the NBA right now. They're only allowing about 97 points per game. If you're wanting a guy that's just going to take a lot of shots and have a lot of usage, you could definitely go there. But not someone that I would be looking at in cash games.
No. It's been weird. I think the only weak position the Spurs have been bad against is shooting guards this year, which kind of doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, it really doesn't. I guess if you look at it, it's basically shooting guards, which is weird because Danny Green is usually pretty good on defense. But I'm not really looking at like Jaylen Brown at all in this spot.
No, me either. Minnesota, Miami next year, 216 total. I actually like this game quite a bit. I think it'll go somewhat overlooked, just given the fact that it's early. There's a lot of late games with higher totals. Start the Minnesota side here. Karl Anthony Towns obviously coming off a monster game. I like him in this spot with no Hassan Whiteside. I mean, I think we can kind of continue to look at him, and I think he's a good pivot off of those looking to get in the Cousins and Davises of the world tonight.
Yeah, Cat's a guy that's on my short list at center. If you look at it, obviously you mentioned he's coming off a huge game against the Thunder. He put up 33 points, 19 rebounds, had 4 blocks. Finally had a Towns game that we've been waiting for. I like the matchup specifically, especially without Whiteside, because where Cat's shot distribution is basically coming from. He's shooting 47% of his shots at the rim, an additional 25% of those in the paint. Miami is right now allowing opponents to shoot over 41% in the paint, and they're being out rebounded by about 4 rebounds per game. So this is definitely a spot where Cat could actually put up a decent number, and there's really not anyone that's going to be able to defend him. Like, they're going to start Bam Adebayo most likely. He's going to struggle against Towns, and then you're going to have James Johnson and Kelly Olynyk in there as well. And neither one of those guys really scare me defensively.
No, me either. As far as anyone else on Minnesota, like Andrew Wiggins, I have a little bit of interest in tournaments tonight because his price has come down a little bit. I mean, still sitting with a 25% usage. It's second to Towns on the Wolves there. And I mean, for me, like if I'm going secondary options, I mean, I think Wiggins is the guy because I don't really like Teague's spot tonight. Butler's usage really hasn't been what I want it to be at his price tag. So for me, it's kind of just Towns and Wiggins.
Yeah, that'd be where I would go. I don't have a ton of interest in any of the other options outside of Cat, but if you were forcing me to pick one, it would definitely be Wiggins.
Yep. On the Miami side, we mentioned Hassan Whiteside being out. Any interest for Miami guys?
Yeah, actually, I have a lot of interest in a couple guys here. As much as it pains me to say this, I think this is an excellent spot for Dion Waiters. Miami or Minnesota actually really struggles to defend the rim, and both Waiters and Dragic kind of make the biscuits at the rim. They like to attack the rim. Miami's offense is predicated on driving into the lane and either getting a shot at the rim or kicking it out to a shooter. Waiters and Dragic both do that a lot. And then when they're not driving, when someone else is kind of driving and they're operating in the kick out, Waiters and Dragic are the two guys that are getting the ball and shooting a lot of 3-point attempts. So Minnesota struggles to defend the rim. They struggle in transition. I think this is a spot for both guys to have decent games.
I really like the price tag on Dragic tonight. I mean, 6,900 on FanDuel, 65 on DraftKings. I mean, like you said, it's just been a good spot against Minnesota, just in terms of point guards, especially. I mean, they're 29th in defensive efficiency. Dragic he's a guy I feel safe about. Would like to see a little bit more upside, but I think at these prices, you can be okay with it, I think, in cash. GPPs, I'm not against it. It's like you have that extra salary and you can move up from one of the cheaper guys and kind of get him, and who's maybe a little bit safer option.
Yeah, definitely.
So any interest in front court guys, James Johnson, Kelly Olynyk?
I don't mind Kelly Olynyk. Again, coming off a decent game, a big game against Boston. Obviously, you do have the revenge factor there, but let us down against San Antonio. But he's been solid without Whiteside there, and with him and James Johnson kind of sharing some of those minutes. So I do like him at only 5,500 on DraftKings.
Yep. Denver, New York next year, 210. Both these teams on a back-to-back. Good spot for I think both sides here to get some exposure. Probably a really good value game because there's quite a bit of value in this spot, especially at the guard position.
Yeah, I guess if we want to look at the Denver side, I would definitely look at Jamal Murray, who's finally coming off a decent game. He finally actually was able to hit some shots going. He's still only shooting 34% from the floor and 16.7% from three, but against Brooklyn, he shot 57% from the floor and 66% from three, put up 26 points. The Knicks not as bad defensively as the numbers might appear. They are they're not really allowing a ton of points. They're only allowing 101.4 points per game. They're playing really slow. Both teams are averaging less than 100 possessions. I'm not really that intrigued in most of the options here. If you want me to be 100% honest here, but I think Murray Harris is definitely an interesting option, especially if they can get out and actually run in transition. And then Millsap is a guy that I'm looking at from the Denver side.
Yeah, I like the guards much more than I do, Jokic tonight. Millsap, his price is still down, so I don't mind him. Like I like Barton here. Murray, as you mentioned, I mean Murray, 24% usage this year. His shot finally was getting going last night. And yeah, like you said, I mean the Knicks really, not allowing a ton of production. Point guards has been the best spot to really target the Knicks with this year, especially if they're going to play kind of, older point guards that probably shouldn't be in the league anymore. So I'm fine with really using Murray, Barton, or Harris, like you said. But I'm off Jokic. I think Millsap's more of a guy. If I can fit him in, I'll use him.
Yeah, I'm mostly just a fan of where like Millsap shot distribution right now, and kind of the way that they play when he's on the court really matches up with the one weakness that Denver has. Which is kind of in transition. So I think this is an excellent spot to target one of those guys.
On the Knicks side, I'm kind of off the front court. We were talking rotations before. Obviously we saw Cantor play over 30 minutes last night against Cleveland. Cantor's been probably the best, obviously, fancy guy for the Knicks in terms of front court that's not named Porzingis. Just a tough spot against Denver. I just don't really like targeting bigs against Denver. So I'm kind of off those guys. I'd rather probably just look at maybe a Tim Hardaway Jr. and use him for how cheap he is and know that he's going to get his shots up.
Yeah, I think you could look at Kristaps in cash games just because the shots are going to be there for him. I mean, he attempted 27 against Cleveland. He's attempted over 20 in almost in every game except for the Boston game. I think you could go there in cash games just because you have a decent floor, but I don't think he has upside for GPPs here. Hardaway finally got out the schneid in a big way last game against Cleveland. Put up 57 fantasy points, shot 58% from the floor, took 19 shot attempts. That's kind of what he's going to do. He's going to come in, he's going to jack up a ton of shots, and if he's feeling it, he's going to have a huge game. But if he misses a few shots early on, then he's going to be down for the rest of the game. So probably a GPP guy for me. I don't think he's safe enough for cash. And then Jarrett Jack's going to be the guy that's going to garner a ton of ownership, I think. I don't mind it. Denver's actually defended against point guards fairly well at times this season. I think Schroeder had a decent game against them on Friday. Spencer Dinwiddie actually had a decent game against them yesterday. But they run kind of the same thing that Milwaukee does, where they try to trap the point guard and force the ball out of his hand. If I'm looking at a point guard from this team, I think I'd rather have Frank Ntilikina, who will go overlooked because he comes off the bench.
Yeah, we're taking a look. I mean, kind of expecting more minutes out of him, just given the fact that, one youthful body there in New York, which they need, and talking about kind of getting him a little bit more involved. So, yeah, I mean, I think Jack's probably actually a really good fade on tonight's slate if he's going to be heavily owned.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of playing 80-year-old Jarrett Jack coming off 34 minutes against Cleveland. Like I don't like that idea. Tired legs, hasn't played. I mean, he's only played in 3 games this season, and to come off 34 minutes against Cleveland, no, it's a fade for me.
Yeah. Charlotte, Memphis, 194 total here. I'm not really thrilled with this game. I know you actually have a couple plays that you want to mention.
Yeah, and these are 2 guys that I'm pretty much just interested in from the Memphis side of things. One of them being Tyreke Evans, has almost 24% usage rate off the bench. Charlotte really struggles to defend pick and roll ball handlers. They're allowing them shoot about 46% of the time. Tyreke operates as the pick and roll ball handler about 34% of the time when he's on the floor. This is going to be an excellent spot for him to kind of eat up some usage and pour in some scoring off the bench. I don't mind James Ennis either. He's another guy. He leads the Grizzlies in shots at the rim. He's taken 51% of his shots actually at the rim. The Charlotte Hornets are allowing opponents to shoot 63% at the rim, so it's definitely an interesting spot for these two cheap guys from the Memphis side of things.
Yeah, Evans, the guy I don't mind. Reasonable price tag for him. On the Charlotte side, any interest in these guys? I mean, really a tough spot for basically the guys that we want to use or would want to use.
The only guy that I would really consider here would be Marvin Williams, just because he's 3,900 on DraftKings, fills in a kind of a tough position if you're looking to pay down, and going to play a lot of minutes again if Frank Kaminsky is out.
That's true. Anyone else?
No, not really.
Sixers and Rockets next year, 218 total. Basically a replay of what we got a few nights ago, where it was the Clint Capella show. Obviously different price tag from where we got him last, but I mean another good spot for the Rockets here, especially at home. And their prices, I mean, really outside of Harden are at a nice little bargain.
Yeah, I have a lot of interest in this game. Obviously, you mentioned Clint Capella, prices up just a little bit as compared to what it was last time out, but it should be after the dude put up a double-double in the first half against the Sixers. Starting with him, I think you just lock him in and move on, especially in cash games. He's going to be a popular option, so you could definitely justify a fade in GPPs, but if you're looking at the two center route on DraftKings, I think you put Capella in and then move on.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when you kind of start to look at these other guys, and Eric Gordon due back tonight, he's been the guy that I don't mind plugging in at shooting guard, just given the fact that his usage has been phenomenal. He's been playing at just kind of a rate that I haven't seen out of him. He's pushed another level, and I'm going to continue to kind of use him when I don't use Harden, because I always want exposure to Houston.
Yeah, sorry, apparently Karl-Anthony Towns is sick. I got distracted. I saw ailing Karl-Anthony Towns in a headline from the Star Tribune, but apparently he has the sniffles and says he's dying. He does have a very long starting streak. Yeah, he's currently at 169 games. It's the longest such current streak in the NBA. He said he's going to start tonight, but that is something to keep an eye on. So yeah, there's that. I completely missed everything. I was reading that. I'm sorry.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. Take a look at Houston. Outside of guys like Capella, we're talking Eric Gordon. Eric Gordon's a guy I don't mind getting exposure to, given his usage rate off the bench, and his scoring production has been phenomenal to start the year.
Yeah, speaking of sick guys, obviously he missed last game because he was sick. He is going to play tonight, and obviously he's going to start because with Chris Paul injured, he's been back in the starting lineup. But just an excellent spot. Kind of like it was last time out, if you're going to fade James Harden, you kind of need to have Eric Gordon in your lineups, because one of these two guards is going to go off. Both of them are probably going to go off and have huge games. And you want to have exposure to one of the primary drivers in this offense. So obviously Harden's in a fantastic spot. If you can afford him, you put him in there. But I think Eric Gordon is the guy that I'm kind of locking in at 6,700 on DraftKings as excellent exposure to this game.
It's funny because Harden's kind of that guy tonight where, we're going to get to Cousins and Davis. And, I think you and I both are looking to pay up for them instead of more Harden, just because, one, there's quite a bit of depth at the guard position tonight. James Harden's been, hasn't really flashed, the huge upside that Davis and Cousins have. I mean, he obviously had the great game against Philly last time out, but the 8 turnovers really did kill him on FanDuel. That's something I always note there with him, but I don't mind him. I'll have exposure, but probably not as much as maybe some other people do.
Yeah, it's the same kind of way I'm going.
So, Ryan Anderson, I know you're not a big Ryan Anderson guy. I don't mind him on tonight's slate. It's a decent spot for him. He's still playing, right around 30 minutes a game. You mentioned, he picked up more minutes because of Ariza, Gordon being out. But I mean, still shooting a ton. Obviously, this is a guy basically if he gets hot from 3, I mean, he's on, because he's always going to be a guy who probably gets around 5-7 rebounds anyway. So I don't mind him at his price tag. I think if he was any more expensive, I could be off of him.
Yeah, I can't do it tonight. Like, if this is going to be a Ryan Anderson chalk spot, especially at elevated price tags, it's definitely the time that I'm going to jump off. And obviously, Ryan Anderson does have pretty well publicized home road splits. If I recall correctly, there's something about the lights at the Houston arena. I can't remember the name of it, that really bothers him whenever he's shooting. And yeah, it's a fade spot for me for Anderson. I'd rather use Trevor Ariza, who is cheaper just about everywhere. Actually, I think he's cheaper in 100% of places. Just I think a better all around option in this spot tonight.
Man, digging deep with the light splits.
Hey, apparently this is a thing for Houston teams, because isn't it? It's an issue for the Astros when they play at Minute Maid. I think there's issues with the lighting and it bothers hitters whenever they're trying to hit. So apparently players in Houston just don't like the lights at any of their arenas.
Well, hey, they fixed it last night with 25 runs.
I think that has to do more with the juiced ball.
That's true. Yeah,
we won't get into that whole scandal because apparently that's a thing now too with the different baseball.
That's true. On the Philly side, obviously looking at some of these top end options. I mean, I can't say that Ben Simmons doesn't deserve the price tag that he's at, because he's been phenomenal. I will continue to get exposure. Not as much as I did prior when he was a little bit cheaper, but this is a guy I just kind of feel comfortable locking in on a night-to-night basis.
Yeah, same here. And the higher his price climbs, the lower his ownership is probably going to be. But I mean, if you look at it, just look at the production that he's had against Dallas, which is not a very good matchup in terms of pace. 51 fantasy points against Houston. He put up 42 on 41% shooting. And I actually wrote about Ben Simmons today, and I noted that he's going to face Trevor Ariza as opposed to Emba Amute and PJ Tucker. And I think you could argue that PJ Tucker and Emba Amute are better defenders at this point in their careers. So I think this is a spot where Simmons could actually come out and have a better game than he did last time. I really want to get exposure to Philly. There's a lot of great options, but Simmons is probably the high dollar option that I'm looking at.
Yeah. I kind of will echo my thoughts on Embiid as I usually do. I mean, I don't mind him tonight. Once again, I just don't think he's going to be a priority in my lineups because of his price and just because he's never going to see a ton of usage, or a ton of minutes. I kind of rather go other directions.
Yeah, if you're building a lot of GPP lineups, it makes sense to get some exposure to him, but he's not a core guy for me tonight.
No. Core guys, though, TJ McConnell, price obviously did not rise after, playing back-to-back really strong games. With Markelle Fultz out, we've clearly seen the minutes that were left up go to McConnell. McConnell's been the more productive guard out of him and Bayless. Still super cheap. Not a bad spot here against Houston. Obviously had the 6-steal game against them last time out. But we know the assists are going to be there. I mean, he really is a double-double threat.
Yeah, you basically took the words right out of my mouth. I think this is a great spot. Obviously, the shot attempts have been there the last 2 games for him too, 8 and 10. And if Redick is out this game, which we don't have any word yet, he's still listed as questionable. We're going to see McConnell get a few extra shot attempts. So I think you kind of just plug him in, move along. He's your value guard on both sides tonight.
Yep. Any interest in Robert Covington?
I don't know. I think I have more interest in him if Redick is going to sit. If you look at it, he did have 18 shot attempts against Houston last time out. You could definitely go there. He's probably going to go overlooked tonight. I think on FanDuel he makes a little bit better play at 6,400 because there's not a lot of great options in the mid range at small forward.
No, there's really not. So yeah, I kind of like him. I mean, 6,400. It's just a matter of if his shot's on or not. And I do like the fact that he can always rack up some steals. He's a decent defensive fantasy producer, so I don't mind him. Anyone else on Philly there?
If Redick plays and that back is feeling good, then I definitely think he's in a great spot. Again, coming off a huge game against them last time out. If he doesn't play, I don't know. You could maybe look at Sarge, who's cheap. He just doesn't have a lot of usage, so it's really tough to trust him.
Moving on, highest scoring total of the night: Orlando and New Orleans, 225. Obviously, Orlando playing on a back-to-back. Let's start with your Orlando side before we really dive into the Pelican situation. But I like Orlando here, even come with the back-to-back. I think really you can kind of go a lot of different directions. I know Fournier was the guy that you were taking a look at, and I think he's going to draw lower ownership because of his price tags, and we're not used to seeing Fournier around 7K.
Yeah, it's when you see that price range, when you see that price on him, it's really tough to even consider him. But then you kind of look at the production that he's had, and he's just been outstanding. Shooting 55% on 3-pointers this season, 54% from two. He's attempted at least 15 shots in 4 games. I think the worst game that he had was 9 against Cleveland. And this is just an excellent spot. I mentioned 3-point shooting. The Pelicans are allowing opponents to shoot 40% on above the break threes, which is where Fournier is attempting 26% of his 3-point shots this season. He's definitely going to go overlooked. He is the one guy from Orlando that I have a ton of interest in here.
And he's playing a ton of minutes. I mean, absolutely logging huge minutes. The only 2 games that he didn't were Spurs and Cleveland, and that's because they blew those 2 teams out. So, if this game is expected to stay close, obviously, I think you can lock him in for 35 minutes tonight. And I'm more than okay with using him. I really don't mind the price tag. I think he's an intriguing option. Jonathan Simmons, I know you and I kind of dug into him a few shows ago where we were looking at him as just being a really good option. He was going to have a breakout game, and that game, happened last night.
Yeah, we talked about him being kind of the primary ball handler off of the bench with Elfrid Payton being out, which obviously moved DJ Augustin in the starting lineup. But against Charlotte, had a huge game, 9 of 15 from the floor, 27 points, 3 steals, a block. 3 assists and 4 rebounds. He got some extra minutes because Jonathan Isaac was out. If Isaac sits again tonight, which he's currently listed as questionable with an illness, this would be an excellent spot to look at Jonathan Simmons again. I really, really like him at 4,400 if Isaac is out.
I'm with you. I don't have much interest in DJ Augustin. I know he's been filling in for Peyton. Just not a high enough usage or role in this offense for me to really consider. I know he had the good game against Cleveland, but I think there are just far better, cheaper point guard options to use over Augustin.
Yeah, same here. And then I guess Terrence Ross, if you just really want to. But we talked about it before. Terrence Ross is going to come in. He's going to jack up a lot of shots, and he's either going to make them and have a huge game like he did against Charlotte where he put up 30 fantasy points, or against Miami where he put up 35, or he's going to just completely miss like almost every single shot and shoot 9% from the floor like he did against Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, he's cheap. I can understand the dart throw. I won't have a ton of exposure because I don't want a ton of dead lineups. So I'm not really looking to use him. Vucevic or Aaron Gordon, any interest?
In GPPs, yes. I have a hard time trusting any guy, any player that's going to be guarding Anthony Davis or DeMarcus Cousins. It's not a great spot for either one of them, but you could make a case if you really wanted to in GPPs.
On the New Orleans side, we'll break things down with Cousins and Davis. And, I mentioned to you before the show, it's just they're kind of the same type of guy, type of player, except one stays in the game more often than the other. Cousins is a guy I don't mind tonight. Obviously, huge usage, right around 35%. Davis right around 30%. And then a huge drop-off, for other guys after that. But I have no issue with getting exposure to both of them. I have no issue playing them together if you can somehow make that work, which you probably could tonight. There's decent value. So, I mean, outside New Orleans, I don't think there's much for me to really talk about outside of those two and maybe a GPP shot of Drew Holiday.
Yeah, hot take city here, but DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis are good at basketball. Sorry, guys, my keyboard is on fire after that one. I mean, if you really look at it, I mean, these guys just so much usage. The offense just goes through them. They're both averaging just an insane amount of points and rebounds. This is an excellent spot with Orlando being a terrible rebounding team. Despite blowing out Cleveland and San Antonio, they are still bad on defense. They're allowing over 109 points per game. They're allowing 48.8 rebounds per game. I don't see a reason to fade either one of these guys. Cash games, obviously, it's DeMarcus Cousins because you can't trust Anthony Davis in GPPs. GPPs, I think you look at Anthony Davis over DeMarcus Cousins and hope that he plays more than 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. That's the reason why you can't play AD in cash. Orlando, bottom 10 in defensive efficiency against power forwards and centers this season. That's an area where I don't mind targeting. They're 21st in defensive efficiency against point guards. I think Holiday's an interesting GPP play if you want exposure or to want to pair him with a Davis or Cousins tonight, because I don't think a lot of people use them. And Orlando has given up plenty of fantasy points to opposing point guards this season. Obviously not a huge usage rate guy just because, so much is sucked up through Cousins and Davis. But I think if I'm looking at one of the point guards, I'd rather not really use Nelson. I get that he's playing a lot of minutes. I still just prefer McConnell in that price range and rather go Holiday.
Yeah, I definitely do like Holiday. Started to kind of turn it on, especially now that Nelson is there and they can play Holiday off ball a little bit more. The minutes are huge. He played 41 against Sacramento, 37 against Cleveland. He played 38 against the Lakers. At 7,100, I could definitely make a case for him. I think this is a decent spot for him. And I mean, you don't like Jameer Nelson, but hey, it's a revenge game for him. At that price, if you wanted to pair two cheap point guards, you could look there. I mean, the minutes are going to start to be there for him. They've already started to increase in a couple games. Obviously, against Cleveland, only played 19 minutes, but before that, 36 and 31. He's going to be relied upon to kind of lead the offense and get these to allow Drew to play off ball. So you could definitely go there.
Yep. Anyone else on the New Orleans side?
No, I'm not going to be on each one more tonight.
First time all year.
Yeah, right. It is probably the first time this year I've not been on each one more, but not tonight. We'll save him for another night.
Dallas, Utah next year, 192 total. Not an appealing fantasy game on really either side. I guess I have a little bit of interest on maybe two guys from the Utah side, or maybe actually, you know what? I have some interest on the Utah side, but Dallas, I'm kind of off of, unless Dennis Smith does sit tonight. Then I think you can take a look at some of those guys.
Yeah, that's going to be something to keep an eye on. I was getting a headline that it said Smith was out for at least 2 games, but they were talking about Dorian Finney-Smith and not Dennis Smith. So keep an eye on Dennis Smith Jr. He's listed as questionable with the knee injury. If he sits, you could probably look at like JJ Barea, who would be an excellent option for fairly cheap. If you really wanted someone from the Dallas side of things, I guess Harrison Barnes is cheap at 5,300. If you're going to tell me he's going to play 38 minutes and only be like 5,300, I don't hate that option. Just don't really love taking anyone against Utah here.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't mind the Utah side. Like I like Ricky Rubio. His usage has obviously been up this year. He's been more of a focal point in this offense, 25.4%. That's first among the starters. Second, obviously Donovan Mitchell, who just comes in off the bench and jacks up shots. I have interest in those two guys in the guards. I mean, you mentioned Rodney Hood as a potential play tonight. And I think that's scary for you to say too.
Yeah, I have a little gastric distress myself after talking about Rodney Hood. This is an excellent spot for Hood. He's shooting 40% this season on non-corner threes. Dallas is allowing opponents to attempt 26 non-corner threes per game, and they're allowing them to shoot 38%. We've actually seen Hood torch the Mavericks a couple times last season. This is a spot where if you have the stomach for it, like if you have an iron stomach, you could plug Rodney Hood and GPPs and get probably pretty low ownership on him. So he's a guy that I would look at the guard position. I don't dislike Donovan Mitchell. He's another option who's finally started to look really good on offense. And I'm going back to the well on Rudy Gobert. He has let me down so many times this season, just absolutely flopped against the Lakers, played 35 minutes, had 21 fantasy points. But the Mavericks, terrible rebounding team. They're allowing 48 rebounds per game, allowing opponents to shoot like 48% from the floor. Give me one more night of Rudy Gobert before I hop off the train.
I'm okay with Gobert. I definitely am. I mean, you're going to get super low ownership on him. I do wish he was a little bit cheaper on DraftKings, where I think I'd be more inclined to pay him. Um, and FanDuel, I guess too. I mean, 8,200, it's a little bit pricey, but I don't mind it. Derek Favors is actually the guy that I was looking at there for Utah. Minutes have been pretty much steady for the season. He's played 30 minutes in each of the last two games. I 58% from the field. He's a guy that's going to grab a couple boards, especially against this matchup. Like you said, Dallas is one of the worst. They are the worst rebounding team in the league. I just think at his price tag, I can use him and feel pretty comfortable that I can get 25, 30 fantasy points out of him.
Yeah, he's in a good spot going against Dirk Nowitzki and his like 118 defensive rating on the season. So that's a decent option in the mid range at power forward.
Toronto and Portland, 215 total. I'm not buying the 215 total. I think here I'm a little bit hesitant. I think on actually playing guys from this game.
Yeah, when I was making notes and doing research for this game, there was just a whole lot where I was just like, no, I'm not really feeling it. There's maybe one or two guys that I'm kind of looking at, but there's something that's just not appealing about this game at all.
No, I mean, you and I mean, we talked about the defensive front court for Portland, how good they are, obviously rebounding. And it's kind of almost like as if they're clashing against Toronto, who are also a decent defending and rebounding front court, where I just don't want any part of it. Like, it might be actually a really ugly game tonight.
Yeah, there's only like two guys that I'm really interested in here. Starting with Toronto side, and that's DeMar DeRozan, Mr. Mid-range, who is taking 72% of his shots in the mid-range. Portland's allowing opponents to shoot 42.2% in the mid-range this season. Obviously, that's where DeMar DeRozan lives. So you could look at him there. Also, he's getting fouled on a really high 23.2% of his shot attempts, and Portland is allowing league high 30 free throw attempts per game. So I think the spot where DeRozan can kind of torch him from the mid range and also get to the line 10, 11, 12 times and put up a decent game. But he's really the only guy I'm looking at from Toronto. And obviously we're still waiting on injury news from there.
Yeah, Valanciunas is a guy that, looking probably more like a game time decision on tonight's slate, which I think even if he sits, I don't think I'm really going to be going with Toronto still, just given the fact that it is a tougher matchup. And there's a couple other centers I'd probably rather use.
Yeah, I guess Nogueira is also listed still questionable. Pascal Siakam, who's been really, really good the last two games, getting extended run because of those injuries. 3,800 on DraftKings. You could look there if you really need a really cheap forward.
And then interesting guys like CJ Miles, Kyle Lowry, Norman Powell, Serge Ibaka.
Well, Lowry is coming off that triple-double. Maybe he turned the corner here. What is it? 10, 11, and 12 triple-double. Barely getting over that line, but no, I'm not really interested in any of those guys here. Like we were talking about, it's just for something about this game just not that appealing.
Yeah, I'm with you. And on the Portland side, it's weird to say that the only guy that I think I can look at is Alfred Aminu. And even that, I don't feel completely comfortable. He's just kind of a guy where if you need that cheaper power forward, I think he's in play. Like, he's around a lot of other guys like Favors. He's actually pretty close to Millsap on FanDuel. So, I mean, if you have extra cash, I think you'd go up there. But I don't mind him in this spot. I mean, once again, he's rebounding really well. I mean, he's not a huge offensive guy. We know that he's going to get you a few defensive stats. So I don't mind him. Just always foul trouble is the one thing that worries me.
Yeah, I think he's probably a better cash game play because he's probably going to consistently get you 25 to 30 fantasy points. He does have a little bit of upside as we've seen against the Clippers and the Pacers, but minutes seem fairly secure, which is really hard to say when it comes to Terry Stotts and his rotations. But he would be the guy that I'd be looking at.
Yeah, I don't have any real interest in Lillard or McCollum tonight.
No, man, it's so tough to trust Lillard because he can't hit a shot right now. It's been really, really bad, shooting like 37% from the floor, 38% from three. I don't want to go there tonight.
He's still carrying a high price tag. I mean, obviously he's shooting a ton, but like you said, it's just Toronto's not the team where I expect him to get back on track.
No.
So. Golden State, Los Angeles Clippers, 221 total tonight. Golden State 5.5 favorites. Good spot here. I kind of actually like the Clippers side a little bit more because of their price tags. But not to say I have some interest in the Warriors either.
Yeah, I have a lot of interest in this game. One of the strategies that I've been taking a lot this season is I will get like three or four players from one team, kind of stack some of these expected higher scoring games. And the Clippers side actually looks like one of the sides that I might be doing that with tonight.
Yeah. Let's talk Clippers here first. DeAndre Jordan's a good GPP play tonight. Golden State's actually given up a ton of production to centers. Obviously, I know a lot of it came from Cousins and stuff like that. But overall, I mean, this is a game you and I kind of talked. He could notch one of those 10 and 20 rebound games and then kind of add a couple of blocks and steals and be actually a really under-owned high upside center play tonight.
Yeah, he's actually featured in my GPP Greenlight article, but this is an excellent spot, I think, for him to put up a huge game. Obviously, the offensive usage isn't there. He's down to like 11% on the season, which I believe is like almost 8% lower than what it was last year. So that's kind of really, really tough to trust him. But I think, as you mentioned, this is a spot where he could put up a 20 and 10 game. And I mean, if he's only getting 10 points, but he's pulling down 20 rebounds, I will take that any day.
Yeah, me too. I mean, really, when we talk usage, it's just Blake Griffin at this point. We're not seeing really a lot of guys outside of maybe Lou Williams off the bench with the higher usage because, Gallinari's sitting right around 20%. Patrick Beverley's right around 20%. I know you're looking at Austin Rivers and his potential on tonight's slate, and he's still obviously coming off a good game and still cheap.
Yeah, I think Blake Griffin's a very, very interesting option tonight. I think a lot of people are going to look at how he's performed against the Warriors like last year and see that he had 3 really bad games against them. Then he had one really huge game, and that one really huge game was 31 points, 8 boards, 3 steals, and a block. That was the game that Chris Paul actually sat out. And there's been a lot of concern about Blake Griffin and his role and his production without Chris Paul. I think he's put that to bed for me. He's just been outstanding in every single game this season. I like him a lot. An excellent cash game play. I mean, he's consistently getting you like 40 to 45 fantasy points. He does have upside to put up over 50. So this is a great spot. I'll take him at 9,300. Maybe try to pair him with Boogie and then build around that.
I'm with you. Golden State's been actually surprisingly inefficient against power forwards this year. And you look at Blake Griffin, I mean, this is a guy who's probably going to play 37, 38, 39 minutes tonight, if this game stays close, which I expect it to. Vegas does as well. So like you said, cash games, I'm okay with GPPs. On some of these other slates, I wasn't as intrigued with Blake and GPPs because we haven't seen the big 50-point game, which we want out of that price tag. But this could certainly be one of those spots. I mean, everything's just flowing through him. So I like him a lot. And I like the guards, Patrick Beverley, Austin Rivers. I don't mind, tossing in Lou Williams at his now reduced price tag because he was randomly 6K on FanDuel the other day.
Yeah, I think these guys are going to go overlooked. I think Austin Rivers especially because no one really wants to ever use Austin Rivers at an elevated price tag. But I think something to consider here is Rivers has done an excellent job being active on defense and notching some steals. The Warriors actually entered last night's game against the Pistons ranked 26th in the NBA in scoring defense, but they're also giving up like a ton of steals and blocks. They're turning the ball over. They turned the ball over, I think, 26 times against the Pistons, which is the most times they've turned the ball over in a game since like 2006, which is insane. If they're going to be turning the ball over double-digit times, I'm going to be locking in some of these guys that can rack up steals, and that's going to be Beverley and Austin Rivers. And, of course, we know Coach's son, not going to come off the floor, going to jack up a ton of shots. So I don't really see a reason to fade him in the spot.
No, I don't mind him. Anyone else from the Clippers side? Gallinari, any interest?
No, man, I can't go there with Gallinari. It's just I haven't been able to stomach using him at all this season.
No, me either. Well, usage right now really there. He's just around too many other guys that I'd rather use, or I feel like I can get his production for cheaper. So yeah. I'm in agreement. Golden State side of things, Obviously, Kevin Durant's been phenomenal this year. I think, once again, he's my main warrior that I wouldn't mind using. 10-3 over on FanDuel. I don't even think he's cracked. Yeah, he hasn't cracked 10K on DraftKings. He's still 9,800. So I don't mind using Durant. I think he's actually my preferred warrior if you're going that route.
Yeah, he's kind of the guy that I'm looking at from this side of things. Obviously, we expect Patrick Beverley to kind of lock onto Steph Curry and annoy him most of the nights. Hopefully, he doesn't, bang knees and, ruin Curry's season or anything like he's done for other players. But yeah, I think Durant's going to be a really high usage guy tonight. He's going to have the ball more than Curry will, and it's an excellent spot for him. And then Klay Thompson is the other guy that I'm really interested in. From the Golden State side of things.
Yeah, we saw Durant down the stretch last night. I mean, try and pull back even with Detroit, and it was him leading the way. And I think that's going to be how things kind of go because, Curry obviously sky high usage rate this year, him and Durant, and it's just kind of a matter of matchups at this point with Curry seeing Beverly. I'm not really all that high on him this slate. Not to say that he can't go out and put 45 up, but at his price tag, I still think I'd rather see a little bit more. I don't think he's going to shoot as efficiently as he did in the last game.
Yeah, I mean, obviously against Detroit, he finally looks like he broke out of his shooting slump. Shooting 30 or 42% from three. Unlimited attempts though, but the shooting just hasn't been there for him this year, especially from 3-point range. So he's not someone that I'm really targeting for upside tonight.
Yeah. And you're interested in Draymond? Draymond's been kind of a letdown this season.
Until he stops turning the ball over, I don't really have a ton of interest in him. Those turnovers are killing his value on FanDuel especially, but if you look at it, it's 6 against Detroit, 4 against Washington, 6 against Toronto. It's a lot of turnovers. It's really tough to continue to use this guy whenever he's getting negative points because he's just making some really dumb passes right now.
Yeah, he also has 3 games where he scored less than or 3 or less points, and he's actually played reasonable minutes in them. I know he had some foul trouble against Memphis, but he's had a couple of really, really down games. Like, usually I didn't mind using Draymond. Like, you could stomach a couple turnovers out of him. But, for the scoring production, obviously he's never been a huge scoring producer anyway. But if he's not getting around 10 to 15 points, it's kind of a little bit of a bummer.
Yeah, for sure.
So, anyone else?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Non-Boogie, non-AD. Who's your highest scorer of the night? Non-Harden. We'll lump him into.
That's the case. Then I will go with, man, that's tough. Let me go with Blake.
I like Blake. You know what? Toss me in for a little Towns tonight. I'm not worried about the illness. He's dropping a 50 burger.
Flu game.
So that's going to wrap it up here with us. You can check out DailyFantasyCafe.com. Also, Brent's GPP article up on this site. You can check that as well. He obviously highlights some of his plays there, but you can go ahead and get the written content because, one, you like diving in and giving some nice stats here, and I appreciate it. I'm
all about the stats. I'm a stats nerd. I love the statistics.
And he knows the stadium lights. That's something that no other industry person will go and beyond and talk stadium lights. So
there we go.
So
all about those stadium lights.
That's it for us. You can check out DailyFantasyCafe.com and good luck.
Good luck.